Quote, Iranian diplomatic personnel have repeatedly been implicated in assassinations abroad. In other words, they're really good at this. They can reach all around the globe to kill people when they want to, and they have done it. And so the U.S. government was aware that Iran wanted to kill U.S. officials. They knew Iran was capable of doing that kind of thing. They knew Iran is very experienced in that sort of thing. They've killed or tried to kill their own dissidents and whistleblowers and political opponents, not only just over, all over the Middle East, but throughout Europe. They have killed people. They've even tried to kill people here in the United States before. Their security services have reached all around the world to kill people. And they have done it sometimes by finding turncoats, like that Air Force intelligence officer. They've done it sometimes by just sending out their own agents into the world. They have done it even by partnering with just straight-up criminals, by partnering with mobsters and drug gangs in order to carry out targeted killings for the Iranian regime. And they have done it for decades. I mean, you think Russia is good at, flinging people out of windows and dosing people with exotic poisons all over the world? The Russians are pikers at this sort of thing compared to the Iranians, who have not only been doing it for decades, they have been very good at it for decades. And so in the wake of that 2020 U.S. drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, the U.S. government soon became aware that the Iranians were plotting to assassinate U.S. government officials in response. And who exactly were they going to assassinate? Turns out they were going to assassinate President Donald Trump's national security advisor at the time, John Bolton. The Iranians also tried to assassinate Trump's Secretary of State at the time, Mike Pompeo, and Pompeo's senior advisor, a man named Brian Hook. But the U.S. government, at least, was on it. They were aware of it. They knew about these plots and these specific threats and who was being targeted. Bolton and Pompeo and Hook, among other things, were all given round-the-clock security details to protect them from these very live assassination plots. In 2022, a member of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps was formally charged in the United States with the assassination attempt against John Bolton. It also emerged that the Iranians had put together an assassination plot targeting President Donald Trump himself. They were able to bring criminal charges. The federal criminal trial in that case, in the Trump assassination case, that trial actually just started last week in federal court in New York. I mean, for everything else Iran is a big country, more than 90 million people, and they are a powerful country with a sophisticated, intensively resourced, world-class, ruthless set of intelligence and security services, which, of course, target their own people at home to disastrous, murderous effect, particularly recently. But those security services and intelligence services also have tentacles all around the world. And they have used them to target the regime's perceived enemies all over the world, including in the United States of America. Luckily, the U.S. government has been all over them on this. They know what the Iranians are capable of. They know what they've been trying to do. Among other things, the United States government has specialist counterintelligence agents in the FBI who specialize in these kinds of threats, specifically emanating from Iran. Right? We know what we are up against with Iran. And, obviously, China and Russia, they also pose major threats along these same lines. Russia and China have their own dedicated counterintelligence specialists inside the United States government. But the China and Russia specialists are separate from the Iran specialist FBI counterintelligence team that works on this specifically, that guards against this particularly pointed threat from this particularly capable adversary. It's a group at the FBI. It's a unit called CI-12, CI for counterintelligence, CI-12. And thank God we've got them now, right? Now that we just killed Iran's supreme leader and started a huge new war with Iran, with apparently no idea what the consequences would be of us doing that, at least here at home, even if we're just going to be selfish in terms of the risk to us. Well, thank God we've got a unit like CI-12 that really uniquely knows this stuff, that's on it, right? The group that got that Air Force intelligence spy who defected to Iran. that got the people who tried to assassinate John Bolton and discovered the plots to kill Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook, and even the plot to kill Donald Trump. Thank God we've got this group, CI12, right? Last week, FBI Director Kash Patel, while he was coming off a wave of terrible press about U.S. taxpayers paying him to fly to Italy so he could go to a hockey game and chug beer in a locker room, while he was heading into a whole new round of fresh reporting about how he has ordered an elite FBI SWAT team to be personal bodyguards and basically a chauffeur service for his girlfriend. In the middle of that bittersweet symphony of competence, last week, FBI Director Kash Patel fired a dozen FBI agents and staff in the elite counter-espionage and counterintelligence unit CI12. The unit specifically that specializes in international threats from Iran, including their potential reach here in the United States. Kash Patel just fired his way through that unit. Last week, MS Now's Carol Leonnig reporting tonight, quote, on Monday, meaning today, people inside the FBI are bracing for the possibility that Patel will fire more agents and staff on CI12. Carol Leonnig is going to join us live here in just a moment on that new story. You might also recall that right after Trump was sworn in for his second term, one of the first things he did was take away the security details that had been assigned to Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook and John Bolton because, yeah, sure, maybe the Iranian plans to assassinate them were still live, but, you know, if you're Trump, who cares? I mean, the Iranians targeted Trump too, but he has Secret Service protection. What does he care if they knock off anybody else? He'll be fine. We don't know why Donald Trump just started this war in Iran. The Washington Post reported this weekend, and the New York Times reported today that Trump did it basically as a favor, that there was no U.S. intelligence that Iran posed any imminent threat to us, but Saudi Arabia and Israel told Trump to do it, and so he did it. Because, hey, you know, America first. Strongman. We're just going to put our military at the disposal of other countries because they can tell Trump what to do with it? Quote, the attack came despite U.S. intelligence assessments that Iran's forces were unlikely to pose an immediate threat to the U.S. mainland within the next decade. But he did it anyway because Israel and Saudi Arabia told him to, and he apparently does what they say. And now 6 American service members are known to have been killed, and many more injured. There's also new reporting tonight that the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia has been hit by 2 drones. The Washington Post is now also reporting that 2 Defense Department employees, U.S. Defense Department employees, have been wounded in an Iranian drone attack on a hotel in Bahrain. And I mean, in terms of what we are heading into and the kind of risk we're heading into, these are the sort of headlines that we're seeing tonight. Quote, earthquake in the Gulf. Iran war expands to a dozen countries in 72 hours. Just 72 hours after the U.S. and Israel began bombing Iran, the war has already consumed nearly the entire Middle East, reached the gates of Europe, and raised new fears of attacks on American soil. This was the front page of the New York Times that we woke up to today. U.S. troops killed as blasts jolt Mideast. Fear of wider war after Iran's response. Reuters. Dueling headlines here. Iran conflict widens to Lebanon.